Marvel's Avengers should have been amazing, getting the best review scores from players and game companies alike. Any superhero game, regardless of whether it's good or not, absolutely demolishes any of its competition. But when you realise that Marvel's Avengers is being developed by 5 different studios, all undoubtedly with their own visions, yeah, it's a recipe for disaster.
I'm sick of looking at you at the moment. Get out that door.
Regardless of this sickening fact though, you strive forward with your life and end up forgetting the game exists. Meanwhile, the companies working on the game are taking notes from games like Destiny and Anthem, thinking the best thing to do would be to make it a live service game with microtransactions and about 1 million different glitches. While all that is going on though, you remain blissfully unaware that a tsunami is heading your way, until that tsunami catches up with you. You play the broken beta, which is littered with visual glitches, and is overall just a ball ache to sit through. Then suddenly you remember that you pre-ordered the game months ago. There's no going back. This is pretty much what happened to most players, including myself, having only played it once then never touched it again, until only a few days ago, where loading up the game just straight up didn't work, then unfortunately, it did, where I pressed play on a brand new save file. We start the game with a young Kamala Khan, who, like the wimp she is being called a beta by her Sigma dad.
Oh, beta.
They're both on a Quinjet headed towards A-Day, an event where people come together to celebrate their favourite heroes. It's kind of like Minecon in a way, but with more Avengers and less
Kappa. That's great.
Kamala goes and collects comics scattered throughout the event, and once she gets all the comics, her and her dad go to the VIP balcony, which is stupid because they both already have VIP passes. What this introduction is really for though, is it just gets the player used to the controls while they get hologram ass. While also casually meeting the Avengers like we're catching up with old mates at the pub, we also get introduced to the main villain of the game, George Dalton, aka Modok. Admittedly, there are some pretty cringe moments here that immediately made me want to unplug my console and throw it out my window.
And the mob, and the press, and the whole world tell you to move. You plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth, and you say no. You move.
But nevertheless, I plough forward. During the boring-ass press conference, the Golden Gate Bridge explodes and the Avengers jump into action. After switching between the Avengers for a while, and fighting some faceless Taskmaster goons, the Chimera explodes, taking Captain America down with it, and Crystal Dynamics rips straight from the MCU and goes forward in time 5 years for no reason. We pick up with basic bitch beta Kamala inside a hideous room, as we see that after 5 years, she is now a Redditor. Having done a bit of snooping, casually hacks Tony Stark's MySpace account and finds footage of Captain America dying that she'll use to get Reddit karma. However, before she can become internet famous, AIM kills her computer, and she escapes to her den where we see she's lost the fucking plot. And oh yeah, she has powers now. Okay. And instead of just going back home, she decides to go to Utah to find what's left of the Resistance. What exactly are they resisting? AIM. In this universe, AIM is as evil as Amazon and is being run by our boy George, who now has a massive noggin. In Utah, she finds Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, chilling like Bing in what remains in the Chimera, while also being a depressed mess. After a few boring missions, we decide to get the gang back together and look for Iron Man, where he's living in a trailer just outside of a mansion for some reason. But at least he's listening to some banging tunes. And after punching Bruce in the face, they kiss and make up and back it is to Utah. Then we get easily the weirdest mission in the game, where we fly around the AIM base as Iron Man listening to AC/DC, while being blasted at by lasers. After that's done, this is where the game begins to show its true colours. You see, this is a game of two halves. On one hand, there is this linear game that is similar to other AAA titles like Marvel's Spider-Man or the Uncharted games. And on the other hand, there's this live service looter shooter that is so mind-numbing it makes me want to take a shower with my clothes on. The next few missions consist of this small open world that has a few repetitive tasks that can be done ranging from opening chests to saving Inhumans. The game continues on like this for some time, while also sprinkling in some characters like Hank Pym and this jackass kid, with a broken leg that convinces Kamala to go on a rescue mission by herself. And after a boring ass boss fight with Monica in a giant mech suit, she's captured and gets imprisoned on the Chimera that's now airborne. Unfortunately for us though, that doesn't last very long as Modok breaks her out. meaning we'll have to play the game even longer. And oh yeah, our boy Modok has an even bigger head than when we last saw. And just as the game gets the slightest bit interesting, with one of the best set pieces in a superhero game, it throws us right back into a few more war table missions. Also, Thor is here now and he just kind of disappears again until the game remembers he exists. In one of these missions, there's another boss fight with a giant mechanical spider that has no right being as long as it is. After that, the Avengers decide to send Tony to space, where he finds Captain America alive in a space station for some bizarre reason I'm too tired to explain. We then play as Cap for a bit in another boring war table mission as the game tries to encourage us to grind out the same war table missions, just as different characters. This will make the last mission and boss fight even easier, but to that I just said no and ran in the other direction. After a tedious boss fight with Modok and this Kang-looking motherfucker, the game ends. The credits roll, and after watching a cringeworthy post-credit scene that sets up a sequel that I pray doesn't release, and as the credits came to a close, I realised that I wasted a good 10 to 12 hours of my life and I felt completely and utterly lifeless. The combat, however, had the potential to be the one saving grace of Marvel's Avengers, and while it is pretty good being a fairly intricate system that has a range of combos and attacks for each character, meaning no one character feels the exact same to play as. Each character, however, has their own heavy attack, light attack and ranged attack, with abilities called heroics that 9 times out of 10 just won't help in combat whatsoever, either because an enemy off screen blasts you with a rocket or because they ran out of the way. It doesn't help that the best case scenario in any given combat setting is you just being surrounded by hundreds of androids that are solely there just to make your day worse. There is just so much shit that is happening on screen at any given time that you genuinely can't tell what's going on, and this causes you to die, all the while suffering from sensory overload from particle effects and other useless things that don't need to be on screen. The game doesn't do itself any favours, that the only fun characters to play as are Iron Man and Thor, making the other characters seem redundant and boring to play as mentioned before. If being overwhelmed by enemies, Iron Man and Thor can just fly away with no issue. You may get sniped from an enemy 10 miles away somehow, but the game expects you to get over it. I guess you could say Ms. Marvel is fun to play as, because the visuals of her stretchy limbs is animated beautifully on par with the likes of the Scorpion King from The Mummy Returns. Hulk, Captain America and Black Widow though are just straight up mind-numbing to play as, being generic action heroes that have 1 or 2 useful attacks. And in the situations where you're forced to play as characters like Cap, Hulk, Ms. Marvel and Black Widow, the only thing that you're ever thinking is, please God, let me play as Iron Man again. The traversal is also abysmal. You see, Iron Man and Thor in the films go insanely fast, breaking the fucking sound barrier and going hundreds of miles per second. So it's obvious to notice that at full speed flight in the game they only go as fast as the heroes on the ground. And that's pretty much all the traversal, the flying characters. It's just about more of the same. Then we have Hulk, Cap, Ms. Marvel and Black Widow, who all have the ability to walk or sprint. Black Widow and Ms. Marvel are able to grapple onto certain points that allow them to get to other platforms in style, with Kamala using her stretchy arms, and Black Widow using a grapple gun, like she's fucking Batman. Hulk and Cap are able to wall run, with Cap being able to double jump and Hulk being able to scale walls. Now this sounds like a good traversal system. Each character is fun in their own way, albeit a bit clunky and full of jank. Traversal wise, that's pretty much all the game has to offer, being the most bare bones, uninspired system that they could possibly make it. But don't worry, it gets so much worse. The gear, skins and skills in Marvel's Avengers are all linked to the war table missions that can be found, obviously, on the war table, each mission putting you in the middle of a semi-open world with different environments like desert or snow. There are multiple things that you can go around and do in these missions, like go to the question mark icons where you can collect fragments. Whatever purpose they have is unclear, or open chests that give you gear that you can equip onto the character you're playing as. The gear, though, isn't good. As stated a few minutes ago, the dev team thought it would be a good idea to take inspiration from Destiny, and force you to go and grind the same missions to go and collect this gear. It's just a shame though that gear doesn't really serve any purpose, and it isn't even really clear what the gear does. Apparently it increases the power of your character, but it isn't even noticeable as the point that the gear is introduced to the game, the enemies that you're forced to fight now have way more health, inevitably putting you in a gameplay loop of fighting hard enemies so you can go and find better gear. But in the process of getting better gear, you end up finding harder enemies to fight, which leads to getting more gear. And that's pretty much how the game goes until you decide it's time to leave the house. Cosmetically, the gear does fuck all, and that's where Square Enix shoves in skins that are unarguably the worst skins I've ever seen in a superhero game. Each skin that you don't have to pay for in real life money is just a different colour scheme of the one that came before it. And if you want the skins that actually look like they've been designed by someone over the age of 8, you'll have to shell out real life money to buy a skin that you actually want. They aren't cheap either. The suits from Avengers Endgame, for example, are gorgeous in-game, but if you want the entire set, you'll have to spend 7,000 units. And for those units, you'll have to pay a whopping £56. Whether or not that's worth the price though is up to you. The final part of the game I have to complain about is the skill tree. Like any other game, you get skill points by levelling up your character, which you can use to upgrade or add new attack combos. You have your primary skills such as melee and projectiles. The specialty skills allow you to upgrade or change your heroic abilities and defences. The mastery tab is more of the same, being a combination of those. You may think, that is pretty vague, and yes, it is pretty vague because I have no idea what any of it means. Overall, Marvel's Avengers is a diabolical mess.
He said it! He said it!
With a cluttered story that doesn't know if it wants to take the approach of games like Marvel's Spider-Man or a live service one like Fortnite or Destiny. I get that the developers are currently trying to fix a lot of the issues people have with this game ever since it released, making DLC content for Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, Black Panther and Spider-Man, and I assume that roster will continue to grow over time. But is it enough to save the game from the current state it's in? Well, no. It doesn't matter how much free content they decide to add to the game, because, in my opinion, absolutely no one should invest their hours in a game that is fucking broken. It would take more than a miracle to bring a larger player base back to this game, and until they're willing to get rid of all of those pesky microtransactions and fix all of those glitches, I doubt this IP will have much of a future. Regardless though, if you want me to come back at some point and review the DLC content for the game, I'd be more than happy to. Anyway though, if you like watching me suffer and having a borderline aneurysm, leave a like and subscribe to see more of the content you've just watched. Thank you so much and have a good day.